I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me to be the discussant for today's talk. So I
Thank
think
you.
it's also my first time meeting Dr. Nazmul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. May, if you can, your face is half.
Oh,
Yeah.
how about okay?
Yeah.
Let me adjust a little bit. Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Mhm. Is it better?
Yeah, it's okay. No, it's okay. Thank you very
No?
much.
Okay. Yeah. So have you had your dinner?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Oh, why so late? It's already 8 p.m.
Yeah, I usually take after 9.
Wow. So your family also they take it together
Yeah,
with you after.
yeah.
So is your wife cooking or what?
Yeah, usually wife cooks, and sometimes some friends invite me, so I go over there.
That's nice.
So I think we can start the program. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A very good evening to all, and the respected head of the Department of Political Science at International Islamic University of Malaysia, Associate Professor Dr. Shazza Shukri, and the respected team colleagues of the Department of Political Science at International Islamic University of Malaysia, and the respected participants who have joined with us from all parts of the world, and our respected guest for today's event, Assistant Professor Dr. Nazmul Islam. I warmly welcome you all to our today's webinar on great power, rivalry, and geopolitics of South Asia. This is organized by the Policy and Area Studies Research Unit attached to the Department of Political Science at the International Islamic University of Malaysia. I am your moderator for today's session, and my name is Dr. Muhammad Fauz Muhammad Zaki, Assistant Professor in the Department of Political Science at IIUM. And so today's topic is about South Asian geopolitics. As we all know that South Asian geopolitics is shaped by multiple dimensions and factors, regional and as well as the global. In terms of regional factors, we can clearly see the dynamics between Pakistan and Iran. It has a huge impact on the regional politics and geopolitics, and also the Indian regional dominance and hegemonic aspirations is another regional factor that shapes the geopolitics of South Asia. In terms of global aspects, United States, Russia, China, all have significant stakes in South Asian region. Especially, we all know that some obvious factors that US seeks to strengthen its strategic partnership with India to counterbalance China, and on the other hand, Russia uh, also try to engage with Pakistan and China, reflecting a multipolar strategy. China's strategic interest manifests through its economic aids and military cooperation with Pakistan. Again, India perceives that as a challenge. So we see a complex picture of geopolitics when it comes to the South Asian region. And so South Asian geopolitics, in a way, I always say this to my students, is a good case to study and understand the changing dynamics of global power politics. Because I believe South Asia clearly reflects the global power shifts. So against this background, today we have invited an expert to understand this complex changing geopolitical dynamics of South Asia. So we invited actually a prolific author and a researcher. He is none other than Dr. Nazmul Islam. Let me introduce my speaker for our speaker for today's event. Assistant Professor Dr. Nazmul Islam is a distinguished academician and scholar, currently working as a head of Turkey, Asia, and Indo-Pacific Studies, and Assistant Professor of Political Science and Public Administration at Ankara Yildirim Bayezid University. I think I pronounced it correctly, in Turkey. And additionally, Dr. Nazmul Islam teaches postgraduate courses at the Department of Media and Communication Studies at Ankara University and the Department of Peace and Conflict Studies at Social Sciences University of Ankara. Besides this, recently he has officially been appointed as an special advisor at the Foreign Relations and Protocol Department, Grand National Assembly of Turkey, the Turkish Parliament. Starting from June 2, 2024, I think this month, he will begin delivering lectures for newly appointed American diplomats assigned to the South Asian region at the Foreign Service Institute, United States Department of State. Previously, Dr. Islam worked at India's Ministry of External Affairs in an internal fellowship program and also worked as a research assistant at the Saarland University at the University of Cambridge. I think he has a deep he's not an academician, but also he has a long experience as a practitioner of international relations. I hope his background gives us such a picture. Thank you, Dr. Nazmul Islam, for accepting our invitation to share your thoughts on South Asian geopolitics with us today. And apart from Dr. Nazmul Islam, we have a discussant for today's event, who is none other than our colleague, Dr. Lee Pei Mei. Let me introduce her for our audience. Dr. Mei is an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science at International Islamic University of Malaysia. Dr. Mei completed her PhD in 2019 from University of Nottingham, UK, where she worked on her thesis titled Assessing China's Development in the Global Economy, Underdevelopment, Uneven and Combined Development, or Developmental Catch-up. Her general research interest is in the area of international political economy, international relations, specifically focusing on China. Dr. Mei has just published a book titled as China's Economic Development, Decoding and Reframing Its Rise with Routledge. So congratulations, Dr. Mei, for your latest achievement. And then finally, let me give the audience a brief information about the structure of today's program. And our guest speaker, Dr. Nazmul Islam, will present his ideas for 30 to 35 minutes roughly. Our discussant, Dr. Mei, will share her thoughts on the speaker's points and insights for around 5 to 10 minutes. Then we will open up the floor for Q&A comment session, and participants can ask questions directly, or they can write their questions in the chat box. With that note, now it's time to listen to our guest speaker. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Nazmul Islam to start his talk. Dr. Nazmul, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jackie. It's a really great pleasure to have me and also having me in here in this. I'm sure it's a very fantastic program. I'm actually following up some programs for since a couple of months, and I felt it's really a good program for students, possibly most of our students, if I'm not wrong. I actually wrote a message to you. Maybe you didn't see it. But yeah, it's great to have and give this important topic. And also, I saw a professor, Professor Lee Pai. I'm sure that we will have a very good discussion after this short presentation about the South Asian, especially the geopolitics and great power rivalry in there. Probably I can add my presentation.
You can share, Doctor.
Okay, that's good. So I think yeah, without any talks, we can start now. I mean, we can see some possible scenario, how we can link up the great power rivalry and geopolitics of South Asia. I mean, when we will start this discussion, of course, we have to understand the scenario, what is going on in international politics. why we need to focus South Asia, what kind of things is really important in South Asia. But yeah, as I said, like there are some specific issue that we need to address first, and then we can link up to or with the South Asia. So what I was trying to prepare this lecture, I'm trying to develop it from some specific phenomena. So what phenomena I'm trying to tell? The first thing, trying to see that what kind of existing debates we have so far seen in this area. I mean, how we need to define these things. I mean, great power rivalry, the world order, geopolitics, what is going on in the world politics? We have to see it first. And of course, like as it is the academic talks, we have to see what kind of like, theoretical debate in here and what kind of theoretical gap in this kind of discussion. Let's say, for example, we are trying to address the area like South Asia, but the exist theory, is it enough to address this kind of area? I mean, we are talking mostly about mainstream IIUM theories. Are those IIUM theories enough to address the recent phenomenon and recent changes in South Asia or different kind of regions? And of course, then we'll try to see the contemporary aspects and link up with the South Asian fact and the geopolitics and link with the contestation and also different kind of competition in the region, and try to see the future scenario of South Asian geopolitics and great power rivalry. So by looking at this area, like existing debates, what kind of world we are living and what kind of connections and nexuses we have to see in world order, power rivalry or great power rivalry and geopolitics. And then we're trying to see like, okay, I mean, in academia, for any kind of systematic review, what kind of gap we have seen to work on this area. So by looking at the current world, we have to see this very basic phenomenon. The one of the things, I'm just trying to take some quotation to see what is going on in contemporary world. The first thing, for example, I mean, I just took some kind of quotation. If you look here, just a quotation from German foreign minister, he said like no world order. I mean, so it means like, okay, from his perspective, especially he indicate the Russian and Ukraine war and try to say like, okay, I mean, it is happening because we don't have a sustainable and a strong world order. And then also the another commentary that has been given by Murphy, he said like, okay, European leaders are realizing the old global order is crumbling. And that's also another important issue to identify the exist world politics. And apart from that, we have to also see that the 2020, there was a comment in foreign relations. It's also linked up the same thing, the end of the world order. And then during the coronavirus time, there was a very famous commentary by Henry Kissinger. He said, the coronavirus pandemic will forever alter the world order. And then the Bloomberg, they also say that the end of the Americans world order. So these are all of the things are related to tell us the world has been changing, and it has linked with some specific area that we have to identify what kind of changes it is happening here, what kind of the great power competition we have to identify to understand the world order is changing. And of course, there is a very important debate in here, what world order we are addressing here. I mean, when we are trying to take this kind of comments, this kind of quotation, if you see the common things here, all of these, let's say, peoples or scholars or specific, I mean, practitioners, they're trying to identify the Western or Eurocentric world order. And that's the way they want to identify the whole world order system, especially from the last 100 years or to some debate or confrontation, we can say it's more than 400 years. So they're trying to identify this world order. And from their perspective, it is changing. And it is changing, they say like, okay, it's factually true. It is changing because there is some competition and there is some changes in West or in a liberal world order system, and the new world order is coming. So now the question is here, in history, can we say the world order is ending or it is, let's say, it's a done project. I mean, then the current world order will finish their job, then the new world order will not come. No, it's not actually like that, because world order is always exist, and it's a never ending in a history process. So for example, we cannot deny that world order is exist now and it wasn't exist before. Basically, the Western or Eurocentric scholars or practitioners, they're trying to mean that the exist world order means the real world order. When it will finish, then there will have a disorder in the world politics from their perspective, especially we can say. And that's what we can see it in the famous book that has been written by Henry Kissinger. If we look to his third chapter, when he was talking about the world order during the medieval age time. I mean, when he was trying to identify the Islamism or Islamic system in the Middle East or some part of the world, he said it's a disorder. So from their perspective, it is actually meaning there's a world order and how they want to define the world order and what happened during that time. And so they want to identify if the Western world order finished or in, then it will be the end of the world order. But from our perspective, I mean, we don't believe this kind of explanation. We want to say like, no, it's not at the finished of the world order. Rather, we are saying that it's a rivalry or competition. And this competition has some specific meaning. And in that meaning, maybe one world order will complete their, let's say, assignment, and the new world order will come to focus their own area. So now the come up discussion, I mean, how we need to define this world order from which factors. So there are some specific factors that we need to identify to understand who can be great power to make the world order, to make the regional order, to make or identify themselves. Yes, we are the competitors in this exist system. So I've just tried to find out this specific, factors. For example, one could be the influence. So influence is a very important thing. A country, they should have an influence on others. So other could be middle power or small power, whatever it is. A great power, they should have a specific influence on others. And then they should have a control. And of course, with the control, they should have an authority. So it's more related with the power. I mean, so a country, they should have an influence, control, and authority for making hegemony or balance of power. So this is a very interesting thing. I mean, a country, a great power, they should have a two target. I mean, how we need to identify a country? Either they should make a balance or they should make a hegemony in a specific area or in a specific region. And from the other perspective, we can say like a world order or a great power, they have to have a three specific area by making the three specific issues. For example, to make a community, to make an order, and to make stability. So when we are trying to talk about the community, for example, we can say like Turkey, for example. Turkey is trying to make their own cooperation and engagement in Asian countries, in Southeast Asia and South Asia. It's just simply a community because they don't have still that capacity to make an order in there. But if we are talking about, let's say, China and US, of course, they are making their own community, means alliance power or partnership. They have their order. And the most important thing, they have also a role to make stability. Probably we can make a good argument. I mean, as we start from Turkey, let's say in Turkey's role in Middle Eastern country, the same way we can see that Turkey may have this kind of capacity to put themselves as a regional power or regional ownership in there. So these three things are very important to understand the whole scenario, because the next all of the lectures we need to understand and relate these three things: community, order, and stability. So who have this capacity, they will be the great power, and they have a role in returning the real geopolitics in any specific region. It could be South Asia or Southeast Asia or any Asian countries or any region in the whole world. So here is the thing, it's just a pure academic task. I'm just trying to give us some tools to understand what kind of task, what kind of academic and scholarly work so far have been done in different kind of indexes. I just try to make a very simple Prisma model to understand let's say in Google Scholar or Web of Science and also Scopus, what kind of tasks have been done so far. For example, in Google Scholar, more than 6,000 work has been done still 2024. So it looks like, yeah, it's a very important work, and many scholars are trying to identify the geopolitics, then great power rivalry, this kind of issue they're addressing in their scholarly works. And most of the works, that's what I have so far seen in the last 3-4 months, it has addressed the China-US Indo-Pacific free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, Belt and Road Initiative, CPAC, AUKUS, soft power, geoeconomics. Those are the address papers that I found from Google Scholar and also Scopus. So far, 15 articles have been published related to the great power rivalry and geopolitics. It's almost same. That's what I found from Google Scholar. So it looks like, yeah, it has a real importance in our exist academia. And many scholars are trying to address what is going on in world politics by relating and addressing the great power rivalry and geopolitical issue. So now trying to find out, let's say, like for understanding and for hypothetical development, for understanding the future of the scenario of great power rivalry and geopolitics, how we need to see the exist theory and what are the gap of exist theory. The first thing, most of the theoretical understanding when we're trying to address the great power rivalry and geopolitics, it started from the mainstream IIUM theory. Of course, we cannot deny the mainstream IIUM theory like realism or new realism, liberalism, constructivism. But the thing is here, when we're talking the realism and new realism, we have to see the context of this kind of theory. The context of this kind of theory, it has specific objectives because it has developed by looking at the scenario of West and Eurocentric world politics. So when the realism and new realism, they address the examples, most of the examples, it address the development, the politics, the economy of West and Eurocentric world. So it has a huge gap to address what is going on in Asian countries, especially in South Asia. This is the first thing. And apart from that, let's say the scholars, even let's say like Thucydides to Morgenthau, Walls, Mearsheimer, if we want to take even the perspective they took, Thucydides, he took the Greek Athens and Sparta war to address the great power competition during that time. It's also important for us to understand and to link what is going on also in South Asia. But still, it addressed the issue what happened in the Greece, or we can say to some extent in Europe. Apart from the Morgenthau, he took the First World War and the scenario of the world politics. Machiavelli, we can also take example from him. I mean, he took the Italy's case. Walls, he took American perspective to identify the new realist area of power. And Mearsheimer, he also took the American case as a great power. So these are the things absolutely important, but there is a gap by looking at this theory to identify the emerging great powers like China, like India, like even, for example, Turkey, for example, Iran. I mean, there is a gap we have to identify in what theory we need to see the critical gap of understanding the great power competition and geopolitics of a specific region. Apart from that, there is a two interesting work that had to be addressed, that had to be discussed. The one is that, I mean, we have to say like it's Allison's Thucydides trap that has been addressed in 2012. And then he also published a book about that in 2017. And he talked about, let's say, relate the Thucydides, the Peloponnesian War. That's what I talk about. Sparta and the Athens problem. Let's say Athens during 430 BC before the Christ. In a Peloponnesian War, the Athens, they were the emerging power, while the Sparta, they were the rising power. They were the exist power, dominant power, and both powers, what kind of problems they faced during that time and why the Sparta need to involve war with Athens. And he linked up these things with the American and Chinese problem and try to address these things to understand the scenario of great power competition. And apart from that, the nice Kindleberg trap is also more interesting. It said, okay, we shouldn't take the idea of the Thucydides trap to understand the exist great power problems and competition, because there is a huge gap. We shouldn't think like, okay, the America as the dominant power, they should take China seriously, because China could be too strong, seems to be too weak. So we should be careful to fall in even the Thucydides trap. So these are the debates we have so far seen to identify the great power competition, to identify the different geopolitical perspective of different kind of region. And again, I say it, like you have to take these things of why we are talking these things, because we have to link these two things with three specific area: community, order, and stability. So here, we can also move the one more thing, one more theoretical function that we can understand the great power competition and the future of great power competition. That I think the very important. I put a very random figure, and if you look the figure, it's talked that when the dominant power and the emerging power, they will involve in a conflict, they will involve in a real fight like war. So it said like if the power, the balance of power, if it is a near than 4.5 or 5 or 6.5, then they will involve in a war and more conflict or more involved in a major war. But if the power gap between 20% or power differentiate is for like let's say like 20%, then they will have less conflict and less war. Why it is important? Because we need to understand the world is changing, and we are trying to see that there is a deglobalization, there is a transitional era of globalization, there is a illiberal international order, and also illiberal multipolar world order. So we need to understand in this whole scenario, when the emerging power and dominant nation, they will directly put themselves in a war or in a major conflict. So now let's come to this point as identify these things in a first. How emerging great powers, they cannot address by the exist theory because of identity issue, values, norms, discourses, historical narratives, cultural factors, and geosocial and geoeconomic factors. So if you look at this every factors, it is very clear, let's say, like we cannot understand the India's emerging power or China as emerging power, how they're making their own identity in South Asia, how their values are working in there, what norms they're playing to make their cooperation and conflict with other states, what kind of discourses they are developing to identify their own understanding of world politics, and what kind of historical narratives, let's say in a history, in a civilization, how they're making their own values in there. And what kind of cultural factors, we have to see these countries like China or India or even the other countries who are playing in the region. So that's the important thing we have also seen inside or exist our academia and scholarly discussion. Why I'm putting this all of the discussion, because we need to understand first before or randomly jump into the South Asia. What is the gap we have seen in our contemporary academic arena? So let's go to the South Asia and try to link up with the great power rivalry and geopolitics. Let's identify, the South Asia. In what way we need to identify South Asia? South Asia, of course, it has 8 countries, but I just try to differentiate these 8 countries from some specific ways. For example, 3 small countries that should be addressed first. Bhutan, Maldives, and Nepal, but they have a specific influence, and they are influenced by also great powers in a specific way. Apart from that, one of transitional state, we can say like, especially in exist academia, when a state are not functioning the way we have to identify themselves or to them like a state way, like sovereignty or government or a people, whatever it is. That when it is not functioning the way we are expecting in international politics, then we can say it's a transitional state. So Afghanistan, we can say it's a transitional state. I don't want to use the failed state or the other terms that have been developed by many Western scholars, but we can say, yeah, it's in a transitional phase. Apart from that, we have powers, we can say like India. They're trying to put their own narratives in international politics. And 3 transitional middle power state, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, because of their some different kind of influence. For example, we can say that, Bangladesh because of the economy, or Pakistan because of their maybe in global politics because of their military power. We can say them as a transitional middle power status state. So these are the countries we have to identify in South Asia. So now the question is here, how we need to see the great powers in South Asia. We first try to understand who can be the great powers. The first we talk like, okay, the great power, they should have a authority, influence, and they should have that much of power to make their hegemony. So who can be this status? Maybe we can say the US, maybe we can say the China and India. Basically, for South Asia, we can identify these 3 countries because, of course, there are many other countries who have some stage of influence, but in a terms of great power, like making communities order and stability, we have to take these three states, the China, USA, and India's influence in South Asia. So now how we need to see these three countries, different kind of policy in South Asia. I mean, the first thing we have to see that the South Asians security architecture, or even the socio-political architecture. That's the most important thing we need to address the Cold War. Because Cold War is the first thing we need to understand how different kind of great power, they put their footstep in South Asia. And apart from that, American unipolar system after 1990, or we can say the post-Cold War, and we have to also address the India-Pakistan. I will not talk too much because it's I know, I mean, in every topic, we have to go a huge discussion. So I will try to take some points in here to understand that how India-Pakistan conflict, it has a role from the great power competition and great power rivalry. And apart from that, the Afghanistan case, we have to address the 9/11 and American step in here. And the most important thing, Chinese different kind of action. I mean, these 2 points are so important, the China's action and American reaction. I mean, why I put these things is very important because is it mean like America, they don't have any policy before Chinese action in South Asia? The simple answer is no. America, they always have a huge influence, especially when we'll try to address the Cold War, we'll find something very interesting. Yeah, America have an influence, but the Americans' reaction, it has been started after Chinese action in South Asia. And that action has been started from 2013. And we have to specifically talk about the 2017, how China, they put their policy step in South Asia, or to some extent, we can say the hegemonic power or influence in South Asia, and how it make America to be more reactionary towards China, even the Chinese influential projects and policy in South Asia. So that's why these two are so important to understand that the geopolitical global power competition function in the area. And apart from that, we'll try to see the American different kind of game and Chinese different kind of policy in there. And we'll try to see the different confrontation and how even also India trying to making their own status in there. So the first thing we'll try to see the area. I mean, I'm not talking only the South Asia when we're talking about the Cold War. Why? Because I mean, when we're talking the contemporary times, the powerful state or great powers, we're trying to see the China and US. But before that, we have to see there was some starting point for the US, how US enter in the region. That's what we need to address. The USA, before even the Second World War, USA don't have any kind of access to enter in Asian countries, not even the South Asia, nor even the Southeast Asia, and not even the East Asian, Far East Asian countries. So it was the Japan by making a very good collaboration, they enter in Asian countries, and making that collaboration and cooperation, then they have their footstep in Korean War in 1953. And the most important thing, even though they lost in a war in Vietnam, but it has gave another access for USA to put their policy step and military step in Asian countries. And for South Asia, the three scenario is so important. The one is the Pakistan-India's border and Kashmir issues, and also their different kind of problems, and also the regional problems like Afghanistan problem from 1979 when we know the Soviet Union and the different kind of issues. It helped to USA to enter in the region. And also the India-Bangladesh, I mean, let's say like Bangladesh independence in 1979, 71, it also the another assisted or helpful project for the USA to enter in the region. Because before that, we may see that different kind of global power competition in there. Especially we have to address the whole scenario from the Soviet perspective. But this time, the USA, maybe they lost somewhere, maybe they have some more influence, but through these kind of specific countries, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Pakistan, Afghanistan, they enter in the region. And now come here, how USA, they make their unipolar power in the region. Of course, it is not for a long term, but for a specific term, we can say from 1990 to 2010, these 20 years, USA, they were the only unipolar or single power in the region, especially in South Asia. And how they made it? By making the economic liberalization. We know about those kind of academic talks. I mean, the globalization process, the trade liberalization, economic liberalization, and also the military footsteps, and also different kind of security footsteps. US, they made their specific interpretation and intervention in South Asia, which make themselves as like a unipolar country to make the policy and power in the region. But apart from that, I mean, apart from security step, apart from economic step, what USA did a very interestingly and fantastically, that is their soft engagement. So when we're talking about the soft engagement, we are basically talking about the cultural engagement through movies, through language, civil service, NGOs, think tanks. That was the main purpose and main way USA softly engage with the different countries in South Asia and make themselves a single country who can make community, who can make stability, and who can make order in there. And these all things worked very softly, apart or except Afghanistan. So that's a very interesting and a very important point to understand the American policy in South Asia. But till 2010, or we can say 2013, and what happened after 2013? That's an important thing. 2013, we know that China, they first initiated their Belt and Road Initiative. And through this Belt and Road Initiative, China started to make their own policy, or we can say that to make their independent policy in different regions, and trying to make it's a one kind of crash projects, try to make influence in different area, but that different area make a real fact to have their policy in the region. So I mean, we have to see this kind of action of China. What kind of action China did in the region? Of course, as Dr. Jackie firstly talk about this issue, it's very important to understand the Chinese influence and Chinese order in South Asia. And one thing we have to take note to understand this geopolitical and global power competition function, how it is functioning, we have to see that every country, whatever is USA or India or China or any country, when they're trying to enter in any country, they want to make a model country. So for China, they want to make a model country in South Asia. And in that way, they can show the whole world, look, this is the way, and this is the Chinese policy. China want to establish peaceful country in different region. I mean, that's what they also say to define their foreign policy, peaceful. So they make a target Pakistan. And Pakistan, we know during that time, they have a huge economic volatile relations because of their economic problem. They need to have some partnership, especially from a specific country. And as a decline of cooperation from the USA and choosing themselves to align with the India, Pakistan, they don't have any other option to make a cooperation with China. And China took this opportunity. China established a CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, in 2017. And through this CPEC, they established their specific economic policy in there. So one thing we have to see so far, I mean, if we want to address the Chinese foreign policy, that's a common thing China do in all over the world, whatever it's Africa or even Eurasian countries or Asia or North America, South America, for example. We have seen the very common example. China do their soft engagement through economy. So for China, economy is their soft power. So through economy, they're making their own competitive role in different kind of regions. So Pakistan, it was a good example, like China through this process from Xinjiang to the Gwadar, they make this project. And so, I mean, they had a plan to invest $62 billion inside Pakistan. And the most important target they make in a Gwadar, or we can say that the Gwadar seaport, through these connections, they can send their all of kind of productions to the Pakistan, and it can go directly to the Indian Ocean. And through that Indian Ocean, they can link with the Middle East, like Arabian Sea and also Hormuz Strait. They can also link with the most important area like Horn of Africa and many African seashores. So that's the way they are making their huge step in Pakistan. And apart from that, they show to whole world, look, I mean, through CPEC, we are not only making infrastructure, we are also making investment. We are making schools. We are making university. We are making hospitals. So that's the way they're showing a model country. I mean, of course, we have still a function, like whether it is a successful or not, that's another debate. But China trying to make a model country to the world to show Pakistan is the real Chinese project. China want to make this kind of project in all over the world. Wherever China will go, they want to make that country like a beautiful, like a good investment and infrastructure in those countries. And apart from that, we have to address also the different kind of Chinese action. For example, I mean, in one way, like, so when we are talking about China-India's things, I mean, we are looking to China-India from conflicting area because India is one of the trustable partner from the West, especially from the US. But apart from that, we have seen the China-India, the trade cooperation is a more profound and more interesting and more deep because there's just some saying like India cannot deny China because one is the important thing is a neighbor, and the second thing, the China is coming. I mean, as a not a superpower, but it's a exist great power. And the third thing, yes, they may have some problem in a Kashmir region like Akshay Chin, and they have also problem in Arunachal Pradesh. But apart from that, the other function, especially for the India's own interest, because they are a huge populated country, so they don't have that much of luxury to involve or to engage with conflict. So that's why and so for India, they need China and they need a Chinese positive actions. Whatever they're saying in their different kind of narrative, the deep side, Indian Chinese cooperation is more we can say positive rather than a negative perspective. But we shouldn't go up in a conclusion by looking this kind of scenario. However, I mean, we have to also see that the China-Bangladesh, because China-Bangladesh economic corridor is also still in a process. China want to make the same project what they did in Pakistan, like CPEC. So they want to develop a China CBAC, like especially in a port area, like in a Bay of Bengal, especially in a Cox's Bazar area. That's what we call the port, like Shanadia port. And also they want to have a huge influence in a different side of Bangladesh by making infrastructure and investment in there. And in that way, they want to link these things with the Myanmar, because the second thing we will see the CIMAC, the China-Myanmar Economic Corridor. That's the most important thing for China, because China, they are targeting some specific country in South Asia and also Southeast Asia. So the Myanmar, especially in a Rakhine state, we know that the Rohingya people scenario in there. So there are just some arguments apart from the Rohingya people's crisis with the state. The normal thing, it has been said, the Rohingya people, they have been removed from this place because China, they have huge economic policy or investment policy in that region. And some sorts of argument, they said China may have a military basis or have a target to establish military bases in the region. So that's why they need the Myanmar, or especially the Rakhine state. And as I say, the CBEC, the China-Bangladesh Economic Corridor, if China, if they can make their smooth policy in Bangladesh, then they will have, you see, the Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar. It means it will have a huge step in South Asia, and South Asian step means they will have a huge influence in Indian Ocean, and Indian Ocean influence means in the Pacific area. In the Pacific area's influence means to engage with the whole Africa and also whole Middle Eastern countries. And Middle Eastern countries engagement means the Eurasian countries, and Eurasian countries engagement means Western Europe. And then Western Europe engagement means USA and all, I mean, North America and also South Latin American countries. So that's the way they are making their plan. I mean, we cannot say like, okay, it's a huge successful things. I mean, I can say like some note. I mean, when I was working for my book and also for my PhD thesis just 6-7 years before, I still remember I made some diplomats from China. And I asked these things like, okay, are Chinese coming as a superpower, or like say to be the power who can really challenge US? So most of the diplomats from China, they have a very common thing. They say like, China is not believing quickness and hurriedness, like to do everything as soon as possible, because China, they have 5,000 years of civilization. They know their historical narratives very well. So they are not very quick. They can wait. So they're trying to put their step in every country, whatever it's a CPAC, CBAC, CMAC, or even in Africa or other countries. They're trying to just put their step. They are not trying to make it like a successful project. They have a plan, but not so hurry. They're giving time, the exist power or dominant power. I mean, the Axis power, they can do anything. They don't want to engage with a direct conflict. Rather, they want to just put their step in the region. In that way, they can make their, let's say, like 100 years plan or 500 years plan. That's the way China is thinking, I mean, to want to see the different kind of region. However, I mean, we talk about the Myanmar or Bangladesh, how it's linked up to make Chinese policy in there. Apart from that, the Sri Lanka is also
You have
important for
around
China.
5 minutes, yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, I hope so. I will complete within 5 minutes. Thank you so much, Doctor. The China Sri Lanka, I mean, that's the most important also for China. But as we say, like when we are talking this all kind of step, we are not saying that the China is a successfully did their projects in there. China just trying to put their step in there. But in many cases, they were not so much successful, but still they are very influential in those regions, like in Sri Lanka. I mean, we know, I mean, in many literature, it said it's a debt trap diplomacy about or indicating Hambantota port and Colombo port, how China is dealing with Sri Lankan government and what is Chinese policy in there. But the issue is here, I mean, maybe in a recent time, if we want to analyze the China-Sri Lanka relations, it's not that much successful. But for a long term, China is there and they're trying to make their policy in those specific area. And also we can see that the China, Nepal and China, Maldives, all of the scenario, we have to see that China, they are trying to make an action. They are not talking like, okay, they are going to be very successful to make their action. They're trying to say like, okay, we are trying to in the society, in the culture, in the economy. That's their main policy. And in that way, they are trying to target the small states in South Asia. So when we're talking the small states, you remember the Maldives, Nepal, or Bangladesh, or Sri Lanka, to some extent, we can say Afghanistan. These are the countries we have to address, like we have to understand how China is doing things in there. Now come up the American reaction, how USA is trying to make a reaction, especially when they saw the China, how they're playing their role inside South Asia. We have no, for any kind of dominant nation, whatever it's a Roman Empire, Ottoman Empire, or Persian Empire, Prussia, or we can say like Mughal Empire, any kind of empire, the first and most important thing to sustain their power. So that's why they need to focus more security. That's not also exceptional for USA. For USA to make their hegemony or to sustain their hegemony, they need to always look to their security. And that's why they are always very conservative to make their policy, not like a China. They are not very luxurious to make a more economic investment because they already have engagement. And now what they need first to continue their hegemony, to be very reactionary to the emerging power like China. So that's the way US, they are making their whole policy. And now we can see that in every country, whatever it's a Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, or Maldives, if we want to identify, for example, the Imran Khan regime, maybe it's an internal problems of Pakistan, or Sri Lanka, the internal problem, Bangladesh, the authoritarianism, Maldives, the lack of balance of power, Afghanistan, different kind of chaos, humanitarian insecurity, India, too confused with power and hegemony. In all of the scenario, USA, they are playing with very much reactions. And this reactions is dealt because they are afraid or they're feared of Chinese hegemony in the region. And that's why they are trying to put their own policy. And that policy is only one target, to prioritize or to settle their security. So now come here and to establish the security, they have some specific function. Like say, for example, we know the CPEC, CBEC, CMAC, or Belt and Road Initiative by China. What US is trying to do, they are trying to make a list of some kind of security dialogue, like Quad. US, Japan, and Australia and India, the partner of Quad. And the recent they started a trade-related corridor. It has been started by US and India led. That's called the IMEC. I mean, India, Middle East, and European corridor. And through that corridor, they also make their trade security. And also the AUKUS. AUKUS also another important things to understand the Indo-Pacific region's security and policy, in where the US, they are taking the partnership with Australia and UK to put their hegemony and their stability in the region. And also in the Pacific strategy, the most important thing that US is trying to do from 2021. So from 2021 to till now, USA is very strictly and very focusedly follow the in the Pacific strategy, where the India is one of the most important partner for USA to make their policy for in the Pacific region, for South Asian region, to establish their own hegemony and to make a check and balance of Chinese policy. And also they are making, let's say, like, for making a more economic corridor or more economic cooperation that's called the EPAC. However, what we need to understand from all of the scenario, when we're talking about the China, we are saying that China is trying to make a trade engagement, China is trying to make economic engagement, China is trying to make the political engagement. But for American case, it is about the economic security, political security, and then trade security, and then cultural security, because for them to continue their hegemony and security is very important rather than to make a more engagement. US, they already are exist power, so that's why they don't need to make more engagement. Rather, they want more security in the region. I mean, we can take one example. Probably it would be very important for us to understand. The Imran Khan, when he was fall from the government, he told that he offered US to make a more investment. I mean, digital and technological investment in Pakistan. But USA, they say, no, for us, the border area security is most important. You should give us some opportunity and permission to use drones and to destroy the terrorism problems who are working against USA in the border area of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Afghanistan. So that was the talk. I mean, we have seen also to understand that how USA, they are looking everything from the security perspective rather than engagement perspective. However, I mean, with the conflict between the China and India, Dr. Jackie, I think I can complete you with 2-3 minutes.
Okay,
I hope so I have it. Okay, thank you. So with this competition, the one China and the USA, how we need to put the India in there? I mean, what the gap we have so far seen, that's the way we can say that India is another emerging power. I mean, of course, we can see this thing, or we can talk this thing from very or different dimensions, because it's a different kind of scenario in South Asia, and India is also another power to make their policy. But one thing we have so far seen, India is behaving so quick to make their hegemony in the region. I mean, India is a powerful state, but the way they are, I mean, engaging with different kind of South Asian countries, with let's say like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, or Afghanistan, it looks like they need to study and try to see their own policy, especially with another emerging or another emerging power like China. For example, I mean, why I'm telling these things. The last year, when we were trying to work on the India and Afghanistan issue, India, they have a huge engagement and investment in Afghanistan, but they never thought like the USA, they will withdraw and remove their soldiers from Afghanistan, and it may create a huge problem for Indian investment, that they invested more than $500 million. So it's a huge investment, but they never had any kind of imagination what will happen if USA remove their soldiers and if USA change their policy in the region. So this is the one of the thing that the India's problem. I mean, India, they are also another powerful state in the region. The same thing also they are doing, let's say, in other small states, like in Nepal, like in Bangladesh. I mean, they have a specific policy, but somehow they are missing the point. What will happen if USA is not playing the way they're playing now? Because the USA, they need a partner because they are not trusting any other partners rather than India. But what would be India's role? Because India is still in a transitional point to be our emerging great powers. So as a transitional country, they should have they should need a more time to be a more dominant nation. And we have seen so far, that's the gap they have in the region. And also we can say like, yes, I mean, for India, it's also same like China, they want to make a more model country. I mean, from their perspective, while I was also in India, I met with many politicians and diplomats, and I understood the same thing, that the way China is making their model country like Pakistan by making investment and infrastructural development, India want to put like a Bhutan or Bangladesh, even also, I mean, before the Taliban, like Afghanistan as a model country. So by making this model, they want to show to the whole world or international community, like, I mean, we have also our own steps, we have our own alignment, we have our own policy in those countries, and we are also coming in the world politics. And also, I mean, the engagement, we can talk the BMSTEC or BBIN. These are the real engagement from the Indian side, the way they are making their relations with different countries in South Asia. However, I mean, the way India is behaving, as I said earlier, it could have another problem in future, because India's charm offensive, if they continue to do such thing without making a hard hegemony, they could be a Germany in South Asia. But the way they are still behaving, the way they are still working, it looks like, I mean, if they do not change their policy, then it may create another Soviet Union or Russian's policy during the Cold War time, and make a problem in the region. So they need to study their own policy and great power status in the region to understand with other two great powers like China and USA. And the final things that we can conclude in a way, like what kind of scenario we may see in future in South Asia. I mean, can we predict like there would have another NATO, because China is making their huge footstep. Let's say China will be successful in Pakistan, China will be successful in Myanmar, to some extent in Bangladesh, to some extent in Sri Lanka. They may have a huge military bases in there. I mean, of course, they already have a military bases in Djibouti. They have a military engagement and some small bases in Myanmar, and also other countries. They are doing such thing. Can we say that the US, they will make another NATO in the region? I mean, it's understanding, maybe for a short term, yes, it's not possible. No, I mean, for the mid-term, it will be very hard to make another NATO in the South Asian region. But for a long term, yes, it could be possible, because even the region, they are confused to make or to take their side. They are sometimes, especially in internal political parties, sometimes they're taking side with the US, sometimes they're trying to taking side with the China. And it is a confusing project, because China, they don't want to make any kind of security-oriented projects. Security means not especially with military, it is about the political security. They don't want to engage with any kind of political conflict. So it is a problem. If any country, if they are taking any decision to take the side with China, it means they're making a problem in the region. And it would be another problem, especially for a short term. Short term, I mean, let's say at least for the next 10 to 20 years. I mean, China, they will not make any kind of hegemonic status in the South Asia. Rather, USA, they will be more reactionary. If any country, if any state are making more cordial relations with China, then we'll see more reactionary policy from the USA. And then what South Asian countries can do, especially small states. I think the ASEAN countries can be a good example for South Asian countries, especially for small countries, because many ASEAN countries, they're trying to make a balanced relations with both great powers, whatever it's a China or USA. They're trying to very smooth, very calm, and trying to make a balanced relations. Well, I mean, we can say, I mean, whether it is a successful project or not, that time will say us. But for now, for small states, I mean, the ASEAN countries, that could be another things that the way they can do their policy in future. Rather than to take any side, they can make a more balanced relation with both powerful state. And in that way, they can, or they will be more benefited, because from economic side, maybe they can take more benefits from China. For the security perspective, they may have a more benefits from the US. And in that way, they can make their placement in the region. So, and the last thing, like, you know, where the South Asian countries, they need to understand that the multipolar and the multiplex world. Because in the world system, what we are seeing now, especially in international politics, it is a more multipolar world, because a different kind of power it is coming. I mean, in a Middle East or in a Asia or Africa, in every area, we have seen that there are different power are coming. So this power means we have to engage with more powerful states, not only a single or two powerful state. I mean, we shouldn't look like what we have to behave with the China or US, because there are more powerful states. So in this scenario, a state can behaving a multiplex level. Multiplex level is also a new phenomenon developed by Amitabh Acharya, try to identify a state may have a negative relations with other state because of the security reasons, but they may have a positive relations because of the trade investment because of the economic things. So that's the way they can function with each other. For example, we can talk the Afghanistan and American relations. Maybe for the Taliban, Afghanistan and USA, they may have a negative relations, but for the sake of the different kind of policy, US and Afghanistan, they still can make a positive relations and make a more balanced relations in Afghanistan. So, I mean, that's the way we need to understand that the different kind of geopolitical function in the South Asia, and also the how the great power works in the region. I mean, as I talked before with Dr. Jackie about that. I mean, this topic is so huge, we cannot just complete, I mean, one lecture, but I try to address some specific point. I'm sure like we'll have a more question and more discussion about this point. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah,
Nazmul. And so we have reached full time, 9 o'clock now. And so I invite Dr. May for her contributions. Dr. May, you can have 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Zaki. First of all, I would like to thank Pass-Through team for organizing this wonderful event. Of course, I would so like to thank Dr. Zaki for inviting me to be the discussant today. And of course, to Dr. Nazmul, welcome. And I also would like to thank you for the list of reading that you sent over. It was very comprehensive, but unfortunately, I was not able to read them all because I'm a slow reader. But despite that, I find your book, one of your book, interesting. You talk about China and also India soft power strategy. The reason why I find this interesting is because I have a PhD student that I co-supervise with Dr. Shaza, and he's actually doing research about China's soft power in Afghanistan. And basically, he finds that there is virtually, the absence of literature about China's soft power in Afghanistan. So therefore, I find your work also relevant to his research. I'll be quick. Wouldn't want to take much time. I'll say your talk is very concise and very informative. As you say, there's abundance of information that you have provided to us today from China Belt Road Initiative and different initiative and the U.S. responses to it. And you also talk about the different theories and how you find that there's a gap in the theory. And for us in Southeast Asia, we often hear about discussion about how small states like Malaysia should navigate the great power rivalry. And today, after your presentation, we have a better understanding of how both these great powers, China and US, they actually engage with different countries in Southeast Asia. I'm sorry, in South Asia. So first of all, I would say I agree with your conclusion to say that South Asia can actually learn from ASEAN on how we can navigate this geopolitical competition between this great power. Because if put in our context, there were actually a lot of roundtable out there where the Taiwanese government, the Taiwanese and then the Chinese, and the US, they actually they want to engage with Malaysia. And they keep telling us, is there any possibility that we can elevate our bilateral cooperation? So actually today, there is just one roundtable about Taiwan, and they actually looking for the possibility to work together in the semiconductor industry with Malaysia. So I think, and one more thing I want to note is that I'm very impressed because you get to meet Chinese diplomats to conduct interview for your PhD thesis. Is a very valuable data, as we know that the Chinese diplomats, the officials, they are very not keen to speak to academics or students. So I find that you have good data on your hands. Okay, so despite that, I have several questions despite your very comprehensive presentation today. You talk about America cultural hegemony, and to me, I feel that it's true that in the past they have this cultural hegemony where people think that there's only one culture. We need to be American. The food that we eat, the clothes that we wear, our lifestyles will be very American oriented. But then the Time magazine actually argued that there is the end of America's cultural hegemony. So I was because the observation is that there are many Asian countries like South Korea, even India. In your book, you talk about Bollywood as one of their sources of sources of soft power. And of course, for South Korea, we know about their K-pop, and even for Netflix, the one of the very popular movie on Netflix is the Squid Game. So there's the argument that there's the end of America's cultural hegemony is here. I wonder, what is your assessment? Would you agree with it? And of course, another question that I would like to raise is that you talk about how Bhutan and Bangladesh, these are like you consider countries in South Asia, which have to deal with this geopolitical rivalry between China and the United States. So, in your opinion, I mean, because for India is the emerging power, so they are in a different position compared to Bhutan and Bangladesh. For India, they basically can involve in different organizations like groupings like BRICS or Quad. I mean, I have students who are in one of my class BRICS. They might have other questions about this one later. So India is in a different positions. Yeah, they are emerging power, and they can have to be involved in different groupings and organizations like BRICS and Quads to balance the relationship. But countries such as Bhutan and Bangladesh, they are in a different position. So what do you think? How do you think they should navigate the great power rivalry? Yeah, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. May. And in addition to that, I would like to add another question and allow Dr. Nazmul to answer all those questions. And once we should conclude our session with that. And so my question, in addition to the Dr. May's, that you said that in South Asia, mainly the norms, culture play a great significant role in geopolitical imaginations of the country. In that sense, can you shed a light on how Hindu nationalism contributed to India's recent foreign policy behavior, and how do you evaluate its impact? Because generally we assume that under Modi for last 10 years, India's geopolitics and geopolitical engagement with the regional countries, mainly Muslim countries, for example, Pakistan, Muslim majority countries, Bangladesh, and Maldives, more of a induced or triggered by Hindu nationalist aspirations. Sometimes they apply that. How do you evaluate these cultural aspects, and how that can you reflect comparatively how Pakistan react to that, something like that? Thank you, Dr. Nazmul. So you have roughly 7 minutes to answer all these questions. Yeah. Sorry for
No, it's wonderful, and I really want to say thanks to Dr. Lee Pai. I mean, because I hope so. I didn't take because maybe you need more time. Actually, I'm so sorry because I took too much time. Am I right, Dr. Jackie? I'm sorry to both of you and also our listeners. Yes, I mean, of course, the questions are so interesting and wonderful, but they're just saying, to give an answer with shortly, in social science, it is always problem. Why it's a problem? Because in social science, we can interpret same thing from many perspectives. I mean, and I think in future it will have a much more demand because of the AI. AI now can interpret something, but as a human being, we can interpret maybe something that what we have seen in there, what we saw, what kind of things happening in those kind of society. So let's start with the Dr. Ice, if I'm not wrong, the first thing about the cultural hegemony of US and India. Yeah, I mean, trying to see that how the India's cultural engagement, because I think I just mixed up something. Am I right, Dr. Lee? I mean, is it about the cultural hegemony of India and US? Am I right? And also China?
The cultural hegemony of India, I'm sorry, of the US is coming
Yes.
to an end. So there is
Okay.
argument about this. So I just want to know about your own opinion. What do you think of that?
Okay, thank you so much. In my actual discussion, I put those things, but because due to the short time limit, I can't explain those things. I mean, one of the point I just try to discuss, but I didn't have a time to discuss that. I mean, end of the liberal world order. That's most important thing. I mean, when we're talking the liberalism, I mean, to me, my explanation, liberalism is a religion of exist international order. So, I mean, the liberal behavior is just I mean, the way we are talking any kind of religion, is a Jews or a Christianity or Muslims. I mean, the way we're trying to identify the morality values or so many rules and regulations. The same thing that exists international order, or we can say the secular world order, or the Western world order. The liberal behavior is their religion. So now come here, the liberal things actually related with the culture. I mean, mostly related with the culture. So the way the US, they established their understanding, the cultural engagement. I mean, they started these things after 1990. I mean, we are talking about the soft power mostly. Soft power, even the theorist, I mean, Joseph Nye, he established this idea in 1990 to push American policymakers to make more investment in culture rather than in military. That's what his main argument. I mean, yeah, I mean, we have to have a link with the other society through culture rather than to show themselves, oh, okay, we are so powerful. So why we need it? Because in that way, people will love us. People will love us because of our attraction rather than our force. So in that way, I think, yes, I mean, still USA is very successful to do it, these things, because we are taking the every factors one by one and put aside the China or any other emerging power, China or Russia or India. We have to also give a huge thanks to the US because they're still doing their own task. So what kind of task we are talking? We are talking about their language, for example. I mean, we cannot deny even that the way, I mean, we're talking, the way we are understanding with each other because of this, even it could be academic engagement, even it could be anything, it helped actually American hegemony, whatever we want or not. That's the helpful things for American cultural engagement. And also we can talk the media. I mean, there is no even any alternative media that can really challenge the exist American media engagement. That's what they are trying to make their cultural hegemony. Of course, we can say the Chinese CGT and CCTV, Xinhua or TRT World from Turkey or Al Jazeera, I mean, from Qatar or any other countries, they are trying to make their own steps, but still in compare with the US's media like CNN, like any other media, it's a huge step. I mean, so that's the way they are still very dominant. And apart from any other step, we can talk about sports. We can talk about, let's say, for example, diplomacy. That's the most important thing. I mean, the USA, there is many literature about that. The USA, they are sustaining their power, especially in a contemporary time. It is not because they have a very strong military, because they have a very strong diplomatic cooperation. So for example, what is happening in Burundi or let's say Central Republic of Africa, or what is happening in a very small state in the world, USA, they have some engagement, they have some talk, they're thinking about that. And in that way, they are sustaining their hegemony and their powerful relations with those particular countries. But if we want to say any other states like China, like India, like any other states, I mean, it is still, I mean, they have a huge lack to identify this kind of engagement. So that's why we cannot say like, yeah, no, I mean, the decline of American hegemony. We can say the one thing, the decline of liberal world order. So liberal world order, we can say that the whole phenomenon, not only the US. We can talk about the Europe. Europeans' engagement, it is declining because of the far rightist political parties, because of the Islamophobia, racism, xenophobia. So many things are happening, and it is actually challenging the liberal world order. That's the way they established our world politics. That's the way they established the world order. So we can challenge these things. Yeah, the liberal world order is declining. But the way America is engaging, I don't think so in a short term, it will be declined. But for a long term, yes. I mean, it is not, I mean, the EUSM, because, you know, when we're talking the world order, it is always changing. So one world order will change, and then it will be replaced by another world order. So in that way, yeah, I mean, tomorrow, I mean, American cultural hegemony engagement, it will be declined, but not very soon. because in a current process, it is very clear the American engagement is more powerful, and to some extent, it is still more sustainable. I mean, I forget about the education. I mean, still we cannot compare the educational opportunity, the attraction that US is trying to develop in the world community. It is uncomparable with any other state, any other, I'm talking not state, I'm talking about the great powers. It's really quite impossible for those states to produce this kind of attraction the way US is doing. So that's why I'm not talking it's a positive thing. I'm talking it's a hegemony. US is doing this hegemony by making this kind of attraction, this kind of soft attraction. And in compare with other great power, that is still back, we compare or we compete with USA. But end of the day, I mean, to me, though I wrote 2 books specifically on soft power, but I believe soft power is a post-colonial tools. So these tools are, helping a state to confuse other small states or other states to trust them. Oh, okay, this powerful state is trying to do something really great for us. But in reality, there is no real great things. Everything is just making a hegemony. So, I mean, that's the thing I'm trying to give the first question about the Bhutan, Bangladesh, and also India's things. Professor, could you please also tell
Nazmul,
me?
please make your answers short here because we are running out of time.
Okay. So just try to talk if I'm not wrong about your question, Dr. Jackie. It's about the Indian foreign policy and geopolitics. Am I right, Doctor?
Okay, how the cultural aspect playing out there?
So for Indian case, again, I mean, we have to relate the Indian whole case as a transitional phase. So India, I mean, taking everything, the way US is doing. So it's trying to be a Japan in South Asia or in Asia. So why I'm talking that Japan? Because the Japan is an Asian countries, but trying to do everything like a Western country. I think maybe you have also the good idea about that. So they're trying to show like, okay, we have every connections and engagement, I mean, especially cultural engagement, it took from the West. And by that means they are trying to put themselves like we are a Western way trying to influence or making our cultural engagement with other countries. So the same thing for the India. But the problem is here that India, I mean, somehow they are trying to put more their soft power, and they need to wait to develop and to establish the soft power for the time being. But they are not waiting for that. They are thinking like, okay, we already establishing and producing our soft power, producing our cultural engagement. Now we need to take our fruits as soon as possible. But one of the main problems of soft power, it is not giving fruits very soon. We have to wait. I mean, a country, any country, Malaysia, Turkey, Indonesia, every country, they have their own soft power. But soft power, it needs time. It's not like a hard power. We have a military force and we can engage with others and we can take some fruits immediately. So India, they are making mistake in there. They still have a really a great soft power, like their Bollywood, like their different kind of way they are engaging with many countries. As you talk about the religion, I mean, from Indian perspective, it's Indian soft power because India is talking Hindu people's things, and they believe like, okay, in that way, the Modi regime basically, and still he came in a power. So it means like the administration of India, we need to identify from that perspective. So India is making this kind of policy because in that way, they are making their soft policy in different regions, like in Nepal, like in to some extent in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, and also in Bhutan. So, I mean, talking about the religious, I mean, Hindu peoples, they think, okay, it's the way of making their policy, I mean, soft policy or soft engagement. They are not targeting the whole people. Of course, we are talking the soft power and public policy. It is making policy for mass people. But many countries like India, it is not like that. They are targeting a specific people and they're making their attraction, their soft policy for those specific people. And that's why, I mean, I told you, when in my personal experience, when I met with different kind of people from Indian elite people, especially policymakers, they have a very common thing. They're not targeting to influence Muslim people. Let's say, as you talk about Muslims, maybe in Pakistan or in Bangladesh or let's say in Sri Lanka, for example. Yeah, they have a target if you are secular Muslim. That could be another argument. So that's the way they want to develop their own cultural engagement. And that's the dictionary of Indian cultural engagement, especially in South Asian Muslim countries. So they are not targeting the mass Muslim people, not religious Muslim people. They're targeting basically the minority Hindu people in there. And secondly, the secular Muslim people in there. So that's the way they want to make their own attraction. And that's the way they are making their own policy, cultural policy. It's not something like the American style of cultural hegemony. It's something their own cultural hegemony, we can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nazmul Islam, for your insightful observation. I think we need to continue for hours and hours, but the time does not allow us to continue. And so I want to express my greatest gratitude to our guest speaker, Dr. Nazmul Islam, and who generously accepted our invitation. And so again, thank you very much. So we would like to engage with you in future, hopefully, in these kinds of talks to understand the changing geopolitics. And also, big thank you for Dr. May, Lee Pei May, and she also accepted the invitation and contributed by her insightful observations and questions. And also, again, I would like to thank our incredible audience and students for their presence tonight, and for I think this lecture will create so much of a discussion and debate in my classes next week. And so in addition, before we wrap up, I would like to briefly mention that we have another webinar coming up next week, hopefully, on Ibn Khaldun's political ideas. The speaker will be Professor Hiba Rauf Izzat. And I invite all the audience and participants to join with us in that event as well and share their critical observations. With that note, I conclude today's webinar. Thank you very much, Dr. Nazmul and Dr. May, and all the participants again. And thank you. Conclude this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zaki. Thank you, Dr. Nazmul. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Dr. May and Dr. Jackie, and also the listeners. Thank you so much. If you want to reach to me, I will send my email to Dr. Jackie. Okay. We'll have a discussion so in future. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would love to meet with all of you in Turkey.
So we invite you to Malaysia to come here and interact with our audience. Thank you very much, Dr. Nazmul.
Thank you, Dr. Mil, too. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you to the listener. Thank you. Bye-bye.